Hey gang, Ronan here. Welcome on back to the Retrocade and another episode of our one-day playthroughs. And for this one, we're going to go back to 1995 and play one of the original PlayStation games. It was one of the first 10 games that was released on the console when that little gray juggernaut was unveiled to the world, heralding the real introduction to the 32-bit era. And I will also admit that this is a game that I didn't realize at the time was going to be the first of one of my favorite franchises that has carried me from the mid-90s all the way through to today, because I am nothing if not a massive fighter jockey. So we are going to play the original Air Combat. Now, in Japan, this game is referred to as Ace Combat, which is why all the subsequent sequels bear that name. And I'll get into a little bit of why the name change was different. But one thing I'll tell you off the bat is that while this game looks old, this introduction, I still love it to this day. So like I said, Air Combat came out in North America in September of 1995, and it was one of the original titles to come out for the PlayStation 1. And actually, something I didn't realize is that it was a port of an arcade game that had come out in 1993 that had been created by Namco, but the version that was in the arcades is not the same as what we got on the console. Now, when Namco was putting this together, one of the things that they were actually concerned about with the PlayStation 1 is that they didn't think the hardware was going to be able to create the sort of game or be able to adequately handle the ports of what had been in the arcades. So they had their designers go back and basically create an entirely new version which is built around this storyline. So if you've never played a game in the Ace Combat series, they all follow a very similar narrative thread in that you are a pilot in a collective mercenary air force, and you have to stop a group of individuals who are bent on taking over the world. Now, how this game works is that there are 17 missions that are spread out throughout the game, and this is actually a game, which is why we're doing it for a one-day feature, that you can beat in about, I'd say no more than 3-4 hours, because the missions aren't super long. So, in something similar to what we get later on is that you get this layout of what the mission branches are. And you have 16 aircraft that you get to choose from, which are all actual aircraft. They don't start designing unique and realistic aircraft until later on in the series. I think we're right around the time they get to, Ace Combat 4. They started coming up with ones that were much more fantastical. So as you see here, we've got 6 planes we need to take out, and they are supported by 2 support fighters. Once we take them out, if we take all the targets out first, then that ends the mission. If we leave the support fighters alone and complete the mission parameters, that's fine. If we take them all out, we get the maximum amount possible for doing so. So, as you see, we've got a couple of aircraft that we can start with. We've got the F-4 Phantom, the F-14 Tomcat, and that's it. We will get access to more aircraft as we go. Now, if you look down in the right-hand corner, you see the general specs for each plane. The F-4 being a much older plane from way back 50, almost 60 years ago now in the Vietnam era. It has some benefits to it, but by comparison to the F-14, not nearly enough. So we're going to take the good old Tomcat out, and we are going to fly this puppy in this mission. Now, one of the things that I really enjoyed in playing this game on the PlayStation was if you had access to the sticks, if you had a DualShock controller, then you were able to go ahead and do a lot more realistic maneuvering and ability to try and hit your opponents. So how you're flying this is pretty simple. The left stick handles your controls. Once you get a lock on target, your circle button fires the missiles, or your X button fires your guns. Your R1 button is your accelerator. So you see on the left on the HUD that we are going a lot faster than we had been previously. And this is the MiG-31 that we were taking on earlier. Now you have to bear in mind that this handles very much like an actual aircraft. So if you pull back on the stick, you will go up. If you push forward on the stick, you will go down. And it will take a little bit to get used to how this thing handles. So if getting motion sick is a little difficult or comes naturally to you, this may not necessarily be the game you want to play. I'm just saying that now. So if you want to get a better idea of where your targets are, if you hold the square button down, you see the bigger map, and now I'm able to have a better idea of where these other aircraft are, so now I can go catch them. Now these are ginormous cargo planes. And I want to take this F4 out before he has a chance to lock onto me and attack. Whoa, where am I going here? It's been so long since I played this game that I forgot just how sensitive the controller is. As I inadvertently fire a missile off. Fortunately, we have quite a few left. So now I want to get back in range to be able to fire some missiles off and take this out. I should be able to get close enough. You'll know when you're close enough to fire guns because now you'll get a different reticle. Alright, I'll just take him out. I still don't know where that F4 went. There he is. Now, when they bank like that, it can be a lot harder to be able to sustain a lock and get a missile to hit them. But now we've taken out everything else except these last two cargo planes. And to make sure you don't overshoot the mark, you just want to be able to slow down enough and basically get right up on their 6 And these things are so big that they can't outmaneuver you. So now we get the rundown for what we did on the mission. We took no damage, took down all the planes, so we get 5.94 million credits that we can now put towards buying new aircraft. Later games allow you to buy not only new aircraft, but also new weapons for those aircraft. And they get pretty in-depth. By the time you get to Ace Combat 7, which is the most recent one, you can buy everything from more weapons to, different controls and avionics and stuff that go together with all sorts of different aircraft. So with this one, if I remember right, we've got to be able to take them out fairly quickly, because if we wait too long, they will actually get to our base and bomb us. And we still haven't unlocked any additional aircraft yet. I believe it's once you get past this mission, then we'll start to be able to have a couple that become available. But it's the further along you go, you get more that come in. And in later games, it's a case of having enough credits now. You can bang more sharply if you slow down and then come back in. Now, these fighters that we're taking on are called Tornadoes, and they're primarily ground attack aircraft. They're not necessarily escort fighters. So I got that one. And now I want to take this B-52 out. And the B-52s, if you don't know what a B-52 Stratofortress is, they have been in aerial service to the U.S. military, and I'm not kidding here, for more than 7 decades. And apparently they're supposed to stay in service up through 2050. So they will be, without question, the longest serving military aircraft in history. All right, so we've taken those 2 escorts out. I'll let this guy fly by. So we have to duck out of the way really quick. Come on. All right, I'll take my chances with those escort fighters behind me because I've still got to be able to get rid of these bombers. Here we go. And we'll take out these 2 final bombers. Let him come around. And even though we left those 2 escort fighters alive, we still completed the mission because we took out all the mandatory targets with the bombers. So when this game came out, it was actually fairly highly rated. GameFan gave it a 92 out of 100. GamePro gave it a 3.5 out of 5. IGN gave it 7 out of 10. And the official PlayStation magazine in the UK gave it a 6 out of 10, with Next Gen going 3 out of 5 also. On the whole, the game proved to be successful enough that it helped spawn the franchise. It sold nearly 600,000 units overall, and by 2000, in its first year, I should say, and by 2008, so 13 years after the game initially premiered, it sold 2.23 million copies. It's still actually the second best-selling game of the franchise behind Ace Combat 4, which is the first one that came out on the PS2. So now we've got 8 aircraft to take out. We don't know who or what they are. But I want to see what other aircraft we have. So we've got the MiG-31. And that's the only one we have right now. And this plane is designed to be super fast, so it's not very stable. It's got a ton of offense and defense, decent power, but it's not meant to be very maneuverable either. So I'm actually going to hold off on buying it. And we'll just go ahead and do this mission really fast. And I'm just going to keep up with my good old F-14. We'll have to see what we can do against these 8 aircraft. Now, some of the reviews of this game, and I get it for the time, were saying that the graphics were not as good as they could have been, and they were fairly underwhelming for what the PlayStation was expected to offer. But if you go back and look at not just this game, but the other flagship titles that came out by Namco as part of the launch of the PS1, a lot of those games were not, especially for the time, weren't so totally earth-shattering. And I played quite a few of them. Ridge Racer, which was the big racing game of the time, and also an arcade port, they had to do something similar to what they did with Ace Combat, in that they had to kind of rethink how the graphics were going to be incorporated on an entirely new platform. So we got nicked a little bit. All right. So we got another set of planes coming at us from the back, but I want to take this other tornado out. The other thing you'll notice in playing this game is that the AI is not nearly as sharp as it is in later games, which shouldn't be that much of a surprise, which is why I can basically play chicken with this tornado. Yeah, I know he's right there. I gotta wait for him to bank back around. I didn't miss that one. Whoa, pull up. Ah, Harrier jump jets. All right, so let's get back around to this way. We will turn and burn and head for the last couple of targets. We've got one more Harrier. Now, Harriers are much smaller jets than there were what are called VTOL jets. They're able to take off vertically. They're the first aircraft that was ever designed to be able to do that. So they can take off and land by just not using a conventional runway. They have jets on the undercarriage that they can point them down. Whoop. I thought I'd taken it out. Can I take it out with a cannon? Nope. And now we got two F-18 Hornets. And the Hornets are some of my favorite aircraft of my upbringing because they had just come online when I was a kid. And if you've seen Top Gun Maverick, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about because that's what they predominantly fly in that movie. Whereas in the original Top Gun, it was all about the F-14. And this is the last one we got to deal with. Come on. And he's gone. And this is really how this game works. You just go out and you fly different missions. You take on different aircraft in different scenarios. You take down all the necessary targets. As long as you don't get shot down, you're fine. Now, we did take one hit, so we lost 50 grand in credits, but we still picked up $2.73 million worth. And as you progress through the game, the missions get a little bit harder and they get a little bit more varied. Like, you'll have to take on some ships at sea. You'll have to take on some stuff on the ground. There is enough variation here, and now we're able to get a wingman that we can bring in as well. So now we have to do a night attack on a coast city. So now we've got a wingman that we can have fly with us, and we can either fly with that support or we can launch independently. I'm just going to go ahead and fly with support, and I will have them be on their own. Now, if you choose to have this person fly with you, you see it takes a little bit out of the overall credits that you get. And we're still flying with the same two aircraft, so I'm just going to go ahead and take the F-14, which really, in terms of being able to attack ground targets, isn't the best plane, but of the two, it's still better for taking out things on the whole. So we'll knock this mission out really fast, and then we should be good to go. So he's going to head off. We want to take these pillboxes out because we don't want to deal with AAA fire. So come around. The hitbox in this game for being able to take out planes is a lot different than you get in later games as well. And that little voice that comes through is a bit annoying as well. And you can't turn that off. I wish you could, but unfortunately that's not an option. So we'll take this building out. Take that one out. And now we got some F4s to deal with. Along with the ground target. I'll take that out first. I'm not planning to. And that we're only flying at 500 feet. It doesn't look like we're that far off the ground, but whoop, totally missed the target. I'm pretty sure this is a SAM outpost, which stands for Surface to Air Missile. Or not. So get up off the ground a little bit more. So now I have to turn around really fast and take these last two targets out. And with that, we've already accomplished the mission. So, again, it didn't take very long. We left some of the fighters to fight another day, but I also want to make sure we got this done before half an hour is up. But essentially, this is how air combat works. Is it a complicated game? No. Is it a challenging game? If you're not into playing flight simulators or stuff like this, it might be. By comparison to the later games in the series, this one is actually quite straightforward, and the difficulty curve is not nearly as hard. But is it a good game? I think it's very much a game of its time. Again, if you think about it in terms of having, Sony really needed to find a place to start to get people interested in the PlayStation 1. And they took the approach of, let's put as many different types of games out there as we could. So you had a flight simulator like this with Air Combat. You had a racing game with Ridge Racer. You had Cyber Sled. You had Twisted Metal. You had a couple of early sports games from EA that they were able to port over from the Sega Saturn and other companion consoles of the period. But all of that is not anything different than what Nintendo did with the NES, putting Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt in there, and what Sega did with the Genesis / Mega Drive with Altered Beast, and then later on with Sonic. You need to be able to have stuff out there at launch to get people to go, hey, this is worth dropping $300 at the time to get a PlayStation to play a game like this. And I know better stuff is going to be coming down the line, so let's start building the library now, and let's see if this is going to be an investment that's worthwhile. Is it a game they can make today? Absolutely they can. Like I said, they just came out with Ace Combat 7 for the PS4 / PS5 a couple of years ago. I own it. I have all the Ace Combat series. Would not be surprised at all if Namco, now Bandai Namco, continued making games for this series, because by comparison to AAA titles and things like that, they're not super expensive to make. Again, all things being relative. And there is a definite market, albeit a much smaller one. It's a niche one for people who like these kind of games. And as long as Bandai Namco continue to see a reasonable return on their investment, then why not? The idea of the flight simulator game is nothing new to video game consoles. The first game I got from my Nintendo Entertainment System when I was 10, 11 years old was Top Gun, which we are going to tackle at one point, and that is a very, very difficult game to play, especially now that I'm not 10 or 11 anymore. But anyway, so if you've never tried this game and you want to give it a whirl, it's not hard to find. It was re-released many, 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 many times. I believe you can still get it on the PlayStation Network. If not, I'm playing this on the PC SXR emulator. It's a free emulator. This game isn't very large in disk size, so it doesn't take up much room, as is common for most 32-bit era games. And let me know your experience with it. And if you're a fan of this series, also let me know in the comments what you think about it. What keeps you coming back to these newer ones? Because the storylines have changed, the graphics have gotten better, the planes and the mechanics have gotten much more accurate to both the actual physics of flying and fighter combat. And I think as long as that continues, then yeah, I'll be playing these games until I'm far older than I am right now. So again, that's our one-day playthrough for today. Yes, this is a game that is slightly longer, but I wanted to play it also because the 32-bit generation to me was also really the last one where we seem to have games that you could play and complete in a relatively shorter amount of time. It was, by the time I got to the PS2 era, the real advent of the AAA epic titles was really starting to come to the fore. Not saying that's a bad thing, but nowadays it's a lot harder to find games that you can beat in a day or so. So, as always, if you've enjoyed the content, best way to show it, hit that like button, subscribe if you are new, and ring the bell to be notified of the latest content. And thank you for continuing to tune in to our ongoing series of our first-time playthrough, I should say, of Dark Souls Remastered. We're up into the 30s in the episode count on that. And also, thank you very much for bearing with me. Through the last week of getting those posted, like a lot of the country, I got caught up in that huge winter storm that blew through the north and the northwest. And my power was out, my internet was down, and it made it really hard for me to be able to do much of anything, let alone post content. So the Retrocade was literally on ice for about 4 days. And then once I was able to have a consistent enough power feed and my internet was steady enough, then I was able to start posting things again. So hopefully we won't have to deal with that again for the rest of the season. Be sure to follow us on social media at Ronin's Retrocade, both on Threads and Instagram. Helps spread the word about us. Again, we're trying to get past our already reached goal of 100 subscribers. Now we're trying to just continue to go onwards and upwards and build this community out. So we only can do that if you spread the word about us and get more people coming in to see what we have to offer. And if there's a game you would like to see us feature from the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Super Nintendo, Sega Master System, Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, SNK Neo-Geo, Nintendo 64, Sega Saturn, Sega Dreamcast, PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2, leave it in the comments below or drop me a line on social media. It can be any game from those consoles that you want. My name is Ronin. It has been great to spend this Monday with you. Be safe, be well, happy gaming, and we will talk to you again on Wednesday for another edition of WTF Wednesday. Bye.